I really want to hone in on one thing that really was apparent in 2 of these last 3 games. It's that Domantas Sabonis is not as effective, and this might be obvious, but he's not as effective against smaller lineups. And Philadelphia all game without Embiid, for the most part, had Tobias Harris guarding Domantas Sabonis, and I think when he wasn't guarding him, it was Nicholas Batum. And they did a really good job of collapsing and bothering him. Sometimes it kind of looked a little bit like that Warriors series. And then against Phoenix, Kevin Durant plays the 5 in the final, I think, 7-8 minutes of the game. And it's more of the same. In fact, Mike Brown took Domantas Sabonis out of the game for a couple possessions. It was interesting that without their best playmaker, they came up with 2 turnovers, and Mike Brown quickly put Sabonis back in there. But that didn't make much of a difference because, as Mike Brown continuously pointed out last night, almost like it was the biggest takeaway from this game, which should be very concerning, is that the Kings don't really have an answer when there's 5 shooters on the floor against them.
You got Bill, you got Book, you got KD. And so to get the type of shots that they had, the only way you could probably counteract that is to switch 1 through 5. We just have to figure out a better game plan than blitzing if they have 5 shooters out on the floor.
Because, as Mike Brown said, you can't just switch 1 through 5 because you can't put Sabonis on a guy like Booker. So he said that they had to blitz. And you've seen the Kings blitz a lot this season. You've seen the Kings blitz a lot on this road trip. They even blitzed Bogdanovich in Detroit a little bit in the third quarter. They tried to do it to Tyrese Maxey. They clearly tried to do it to Damian Lillard. And then they obviously tried to do it against Booker in Phoenix. And sometimes it comes up with good results, but it's one of those things where when you constantly have to do that, where you have to do the blitz, which forces even more multiple efforts, which, yeah, the Kings have done well at, but how often can you do that? How sustainable is that? And you're constantly having to rotate. It just makes no sense, and it's always going to set up for situations where you're going to lose games late. The Kings have an issue with certain matchups where they just can't really rely so much on Sabonis. And if Sabonis is going to be nullified to at least some degree, you need to have guys that step up, and Fox is good, Monk is good. Murray can't really carry so much weight on his own, but the Kings have a bunch of guys out there that are going to hardly help. I mean, what's Herter and Barnes going to do without Sabonis having free reign to give them DHO opportunities or look for them as cutters and stuff like that? It creates all sorts of issues, and it also raises the question of what are the Kings going to do in the playoffs? Teams are probably going to try to exploit that aspect of things. And you have a team like Phoenix that will be able to play small. They're probably going to be more beneficial playing small. You could probably point out other teams in the playoffs that could do that to them. So I think this is a big issue because the Kings may have a pretty strong foundation to their core in terms of Fox, Sabonis, Monk, and Murray, but even that doesn't seem strong enough, and the outside pieces really exacerbate and point that out. I mean, the small lineup thing, I think, has to be a huge takeaway from these last 3 games, at least in 2 of the last 3 games, because he is second in the league in triple-doubles, is clearly playing out of his mind most of the time. But there are certain matchups where that can just get taken away from you. And then what you have